Well, hello. As we get closer to Thanksgiving, it's always a time that we're thankful. We think about family. So I am having Grandma on. This is my Grandma Alice. And this is actually the house she lived in when I was growing up. They had moved out of the generational farmhouse that my mom now lives in, moved into here. And then 11 years ago, I moved in here and they moved into town. And this is where we always had Thanksgiving. So I think it's very fitting that I have Grandma here and we are making
pumpkin roll.
Yeah, and Grandma made pumpkin roll every so often. You would always kind of have special things at holidays, and I always remember, it depended what it was. Sometimes it was something by a plate, sometimes it was sparkling juice on the table when we got there, sometimes it was a special dessert.
Sometimes it was a candle, each individual candle.
You would put little candles. She would just do these little special things that just made the Thanksgiving or Christmas, whatever it was, extra special. And I remember pumpkin roll every so often for that reason. So that's what we're gonna make. And honestly, it's really simple. It's quick, it just takes a few steps.
That's right.
And things that maybe the people haven't seen, and sometimes watching someone makes it a little easier. So we are gonna start, and Grandma's going to break in 3 eggs. And this is kind of a sponge cake, so it really starts by beating eggs with sugar until they're thick, which, how do you kind of rate thickness? Just when it gets kind of...
Yeah, not real stiff. Just...
Not stiff, just thick. So kind of like ribbons almost fall on itself with the actual egg and sugar mixture. And the sugar is what helps them really beat up really easily. Did you just one year randomly think, I'm gonna make a pumpkin roll and just decide to do it?
I saw it on...
You just saw the recipe and then thought, you're gonna try that?
That's right.
I think that's
I like to try
fun.
new things once in a while.
You do, which I think is amazing because some grandmas don't like to try new things. They kind of get stuck and you don't. So we have a mixer there. I use a hand mixer. I don't know if you do.
I'm just gonna wipe my fingers off.
You can. Grandma is like me, likes to keep a clean kitchen, so we always like to have things that kind of are able to keep our hands clean. So we're gonna start mixing that, and you can use a stand mixer, a hand mixer, whatever works for you. So we've beat this, and what you can see is, we can kind of use a spoon or a spatula here to show you. Yeah. It kind of has a thickness to it. Mm-hmm. And you can see the air bubbles in it. So you're really working in what's gonna help the cake be lofty, more sponge-like, which is why it's kind of more of a sponge-based. And then at this point, what do? We
wanna put our pumpkin in.
And I think you're like me, you just use canned, pureed pumpkin.
That's right.
And this is the one thing, I'm not usually always brand conscious, but I do think using the brand that we're used to on this can make a difference. The color's always the same that way, and you always get consistency throughout. So sometimes different brands can kind of perform differently once they're baked. And I don't know, I think this one for some reason, it just always...
We're just used to it, aren't we?
We are, and I think it tastes better. So while she's finishing up with that, I'm gonna talk about the dry ingredients, which is a little bit of flour. And what I always do instead of sifting is I stir my flour, and then I just take a scoop, and I fill my measuring cup with a scoop, and kind of overfill it and swoop it off. And Grandma did that too a lot, I know. And you often you had a scoop, but it was like I remember a little plastic cup that you would keep. It was blue or pink. I remember a blue one and a pink one.
I did that in my sugar.
Oh, in your sugar. I was gonna say, I remember those.
The flour, I had a scoop.
I just always remember that, and they just work well. So she's mixing in the pumpkin into the egg mixture. And then I'm gonna add in now to this dry ingredients, a little bit of salt, a little bit of baking soda, which baking soda and baking powder are both used here because they do have a little bit different acting power. So the powder is gonna help it get lofty. The soda is gonna actually help it brown. And so it's gonna work together, and they kind of actually are both needed. Now for the spices, it's pretty simple, but it's a little bit of cinnamon. And I do more cinnamon than clove. I think clove can be overpowering, so I make sure to do a decent amount of cinnamon and just a small amount of cloves, because cloves can sometimes, they can just be a little much, but they smell wonderful. So we're gonna mix that in there. Now, do you usually sift all these ingredients, would you, when you did it?
Yes. No, I stir them up like that.
You just stir them up, okay. That's what I do too.
Yeah.
And why dirty something else when you can just use your little measuring spoon? Mm-hmm. So Grandma was telling me before we started here, the one thing she makes sure to do is, so she has all the egg mixture mixed up, and she makes sure now to stir this in by hand, is that right?
I do.
You fold that in?
I do.
And I assume that's probably just to make sure we don't, we got volume in there and got some air bubbles, and we don't want them now just to go away. So I assume that helps keep them in there and helps keep it lighter and kind of the right consistency.
Yeah, I stir it in instead of mixing it. Well, that's what the recipe says, so.
Well, then that's the way we have to do it. It always turned out perfect when you did it, so that must be the right way. I always remember, I don't know why, I think it's just maybe not normal for all families, but for me, I think I took for granted the fact that we got together every single holiday. And I mean even oftentimes on Mother's Day, which you really should be celebrating and not having to bake, but Grandma would have us over and have a whole meal for us. Sometimes even around Valentine's Day she'd have us, or Father's Day, or whatever kind of occasion there was. Grandma usually made a big meal, would have us over, have everything ready, never let anyone bring anything or do anything.
That's right.
And that's pretty much still to this day. Sometimes today I can maybe talk her into letting me bring one thing, but it's usually very small and minuscule compared to everything she's making. So she still does that, and it amazes me. So that's all mixed up. You're just making sure, I assume there's no lumps or...
That's right, that's right.
Now, you said that you're used to using, I think, wax paper, is that right?
Yes,
but
I do.
I don't actually have wax paper, I'm just so used to parchment. So what I did though was I fit a jelly roll size pan, you have to do a jelly roll size, to make sure that this comes out the right consistency and level, but I lined it with parchment and I cut the corners.
Oh, okay.
That way it kind of fits together. And then you also have kind of that non-stick parchment all the way around. And I used baking spray, and I used the kind that has some flour in it.
Oh, I was gonna say, because I usually flour mine.
I know, and you should try it. If you haven't tried it, I love the one with a little bit of flour for certain, especially like bundt cakes and stuff too. It really does help.
Okay.
I don't know, I like it. So this is ready to go.
Okay.
So Grandma, otherwise, if you don't have like parchment like this, would use wax paper and then grease and flour it.
That's right.
And dump out the excess flour, just have a very thin coat, which works well too.
So you ready for this?
Yeah. I think we can pour it in. Do you want me to hold the bowl and you can scrape it out? It's really important here that we're not trying to overmix it. We're also not wanting to beat it a lot because, like I said, the eggs are gonna help lift it, but all that air we worked into the eggs are really what's gonna help it be that nice texture that you want in the end, and it's gonna help it roll really easily when we're actually doing that. So that's why we don't wanna go to too much. We just wanna really nicely even it out, which I always think you can tell, like Grandma has done this a lot, you can tell because the way she quickly is able to even it out, as opposed to, even sometimes like me, I don't make cake rolls a lot, and I sometimes take a while to do that, but it's important to eat, like, I know in the past when I've been in a hurry, if I don't even it out, you get, spoon? I brought a spoon, oh.
That's fine.
I brought a smaller one. We each are used to different tools. I asked Grandma if she wanted an offset spatula, and she said, I don't use an offset spatula. She's used to a spoon, and that's what is important, that you just gotta use what you have to use. You don't feel like you have to do something if you're not used to it. Do what you're comfortable with.
I think that looks good, don't you? Ready for the oven?
Looks beautiful. I like the color. It's just very Thanksgiving and autumnal.
All right.
So I'll put this in the oven. Once it's baked, we'll show you what you do to make sure you get a nice roll. We're pulling this out, and Grandma, how do you like to test it or check it?
I usually take my finger, and if a sponge comes back up, it's done.
I feel like that's a true baker way. You don't use a skewer or anything, you just know by touch and feel when it springs back. So if it would have stayed down a little bit,
Might not have been done.
you would have maybe kept it in like another minute. These go pretty quick, honestly.
Yeah.
So now, a cake roll, what it is, you put a filling in and you roll it.
After it's
But
cool.
if you would let it cool completely in the pan and do that,
No.
it would just no. It would
won't.
crack.
Yeah, you have to roll it up.
It
And
would crack and break. So what we have here is a little, I'll get you a spoon because I think you like to use a spoon with this.
I do.
And we are gonna do a little powdered sugar. And now we just use, this is an important step, I think, a thin towel. And this is what you're used to and what I grew up with. This is just kind of flour sack material, we call it, which
That's
is an
right.
old, they used to sell flour in nice sacks. Now they don't. But we're gonna put some powdered sugar on it. And what we're gonna do is flip the cake onto this towel that has powdered sugar, which is gonna help it not stick to the towel near as much. And then we're just gonna roll it up while it's warm. And it kind of then gives the cake a memory. So it knows what it's doing and keeps that rolled shape. So then when you let it cool, unroll it and fill it, you don't have to worry about it cracking. Because cracking is, okay, first, you can always cover up the crack if you need to with decoration, but if you can keep it from cracking, this is the step you need to do it in, which is the powdered sugar, which is the towel, all those things. Now, I asked Grandma, and she said I can flip it, which on camera, this is never fun to flip. But we have parchment paper here, you can see, and it comes out really easily. Now, if you didn't have the parchment paper go up the sides, you may have to use a little knife and cut along the sides just to make sure, but as you can see with this one, that's really cut. So I like to set it beside it, I hope, like this. And then I'm just gonna try.
Oh my, you do it that
You do it
way?
with the whole pan,
I
don't
do
you?
the whole pan.
I'm worried this is so slick, it's just gonna fall out, but okay. If Grandma says to do it that way, that's what we'll do. 1, 2, I don't wanna burn your hands.
That's all right. Go
3.
ahead. Good job. Good job.
Do you have asbestos hands? I kinda do.
There you go.
Okay, we got it. That's the only part that's a little worrisome. Is that good?
Pull it away from the side.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty.
There you go. Looks very good.
I'll let you roll it up, because you just want to make sure, I assume you have a nice tight roll, kind of, because that's what's going to give it, and we're doing it long ways, because that's what actually gives you a nice big roll. If you did it the other way, you would get kind of this short half roll when you put a filling in it, and it wouldn't actually look pretty.
There we go.
That's it. So now we put it on a cooling rack.
I like it on a cooling rack.
I'll get a cooling rack, and that's just because condensation, you can already see there's condensation on the counter. So if you keep it on the counter, it won't cool properly and evenly all around. So we'll put this on a cooling rack. We're gonna let it cool completely, but in that time, Grandma's gonna make a filling. I'm gonna make a little bit of an extra topping, and then it will be done. Okay, I'll get the cooling rack, and then we will be all ready to go. That looks really pretty. So while the cake roll is cooling, something new that I'm gonna do that maybe Grandma doesn't do, you don't make brittles a lot, right?
No, I don't.
You weren't a Christmas candy necessarily maker. So what I wanna do is make a pumpkin seed brittle, because I think it'd just be kind of nice to have some crumbled up on top, just for sometimes at Thanksgiving, like I was saying you did. I think it's fun to do something extra that you wouldn't usually do just to make it special or make it look a little bit more. So a brittle is really easy, and it takes very simple ingredients. It's just certain components, like watching the temperature, having everything ready to go at different steps is important. So to start, we're gonna put in a little bit of water. So Grandma's gonna pour that in. And what water does, you just make sure that it kind of, everything heats up really evenly. And then we're gonna put in some sugar. The water also helps to make sure that sugar gets moistened. This is where you can tell it's a candy, because it pretty much just has different kinds of sugar in it. So we're gonna put in some corn syrup too. Now, there's a difference. This is not high fructose corn syrup that everyone always talks about. Instead, this is just corn syrup. And corn syrup is an inert sugar, so it makes sure that the consistency and texture is correct. That's why it's important. And we don't eat a lot of this, so, you know, we just enjoy little bits once in a while. Do you like brittle?
I do like it.
Okay, you like brittle. That's the important part. Yeah. So these are the 3 components, and now what we're gonna do is let that dissolve and heat up on the stove really slowly until it gets to 250 degrees. So you don't have to watch it too close, other than making sure the sugar isn't burning, until it gets to 250. But while we're doing that, I thought, do you have any like Thanksgiving memories when you were growing up, or anything that always happened or didn't happen?
Well, you know, that's been a long time ago.
It has been a while. You've had a few Thanksgivings.
Yes, we did. And as a child, I don't remember too much about getting together on Thanksgiving as I do on Christmas with family.
It just wasn't as big of a holiday as we make it now.
That's right.
Yeah.
And partly is because, well, I lived in the olden days, and we still had mud roads. And you know, like if it was muddy, you know, in the fall or something, people couldn't get to our home.
So even at Thanksgiving, you could have too muddy of road to really be able to go around easily.
That's right.
Which is amazing, because Grandma it's like 6 miles maybe from here where you grew up about. It's not far, but.
Yeah, maybe more like 8 miles.
Or 8, but I just, you know, we still had dirt roads then. It's just kind of, and actually I still have right beside this house, we have a small mud road. It's only, you know, about a mile probably in length, but it's a low maintenance road. It doesn't get a lot of maintenance, so I totally understand that. But you got together at Christmases and...
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We did get together at Christmas with family. Yeah, there wasn't a large family here. And my mother had one brother that was married and one that wasn't married, so it was just yeah. And then later he had, you know, she had another brother that was quite a bit younger than her.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Children.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they got married
16
later.
Years younger. Yeah.
16.
Yes. There were some children in between that they
That's a big difference, though.
Yes,
so you had an uncle that wasn't too much older probably than you.
Oh yes, he was older than me because my mother's quite a bit older.
Oh, but then your oldest sister probably. He would have been somewhat close to her.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would have been shocking. I mean, that would have been different.
Yeah. So, it was different, but
You, though, I'm always impressed. Grandma grew up, obviously, yes, in a different time, but grew up with that extreme sense of work ethic. Like, you helped your dad all the time on the farm.
I helped him a lot. I helped my mother. We worked together as a family.
You walked to school.
I walked to school.
Every day, and would go through a creek, if I remember right, or had to cross a creek.
First, we had to go through pastures and a field, and then to the creek. And then after we got to the creek, of course, we wore our boots because we had to walk over in the water a little
every day.
Mm-hmm. Then we'd take them off, and then we would be the dirt road the rest of the way to school.
So you would carry your boots with you to school?
No, we would stay and keep them there by the creek.
So every day going and coming to school, you would have a time where you had to do that?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a little different than it is today.
Yeah. Yeah, and then in the wintertime it was really cold. It was, a lot of, it was cold when you got home after walking all that way. And then sometimes my mother would have things in her cooking, baking for us. It smelled so good. And in those days, she just didn't have stoves like we have. It was a wood stove that you put wood in and
Hers
burning.
was all wood.
Yes, so you had to keep the oven. It would get hot with the wood, from the wood in the stove, and the top would get hot.
I always think the temperature would be so hard to regulate with that.
Yeah, it was probably. I never
You
baked
probably
at
just
that
knew like
time.
the distance from the heat where things would bake and kind of know like a cake does best over here. Or that would be hard, I would think.
It would have been hard for them to know how to do it, but I guess with time they knew how.
Right, she probably just knew how to do it.
Yeah.
And you would have always had to have wood cut
Yes,
all times of the year.
All times of the year. This
So
winter.
did you have a summer kitchen that was off your house so it didn't get so hot in the summer?
No, we didn't.
So it just got hot.
It just got hot. No. Now, some people did have a summer kitchen.
That would be the
so
hard
we
part,
didn't
I would
have-
think.
yeah.
I'm just going to check this well. It's just starting to come to a boil, and we let it just keep boiling just to make sure. So we're going to let that continually boil and cook, and then while that's going, we can make the filling too. While the brittle is still getting up to temperature where it needs to, we're going to make the filling, which is really simple. We have cream cheese, butter, and both of those are at room temperature. Now, I leave mine out overnight.
Oh, okay.
Oh, do you not?
No, but that's all right.
I just think that works well because then it's for sure room temperature. And I don't like when they get, sometimes the butter will get lumps of it if it isn't at room temperature.
Yeah, it has to be room temperature.
So Grandma's gonna put those into the bowl. We have a mixer ready to make sure they're creamed. And then we have powdered sugar. So it's a pretty simple, pretty much a cream cheese frosting is what we're doing. And we're gonna sift the powdered sugar. And Grandma said she does that too. And that's because you can just see by nature, look at all the lumps right in there of the powdered sugar. And you made the point to make sure to tell me you measure it after it's sifted.
That's right.
Which is a really big difference, I think, in recipes. Some recipes, will say, an amount of powdered sugar, comma, sifted, or some will say sifted powdered sugar, which is the delineation between knowing when and how. So I'm gonna be sifting this, and do you mix those up first at all?
I will.
I just think that makes sure they're creamed.
Oh yes, I mix these together first. You're right.
Okay, Grandma has that all mixed up, and I have the powdered sugar pretty much sifted through, and now I'm gonna measure it out. So this, you can tell that the cream cheese now and the butter is very creamed. It is softened. It is made sure that we have it all, no lumps, because that's really the important part here, is not wanting the lumps, not wanting to have any of that extra. So I'm gonna make sure to get all this powdered sugar right in here, and I'm spooning it in just to make sure I get the right level, the right amount, which is gonna be just perfect. So I'm gonna put that right in there. And then we also are gonna put in just a little bit of vanilla, which I think balances out the flavors. It makes it more kind of like a frosting. So a little bit of that. I know I could measure it, but I don't. I just put it in. And the powdered sugar, which, we had just a little bit more there. There we go. And while Grandma's finishing mixing that, my brittle over here is at the correct temperature now, at 250 degrees. So I'm gonna add in a little bit of butter, which this is for flavor, and I'm gonna add in my raw pumpkin seeds. So we're using raw because what they're gonna do is actually cook in this mixture. So it's gonna cool down at first, but then we heat it up to 310 degrees. And that's where a hard crack or a brittle stage is. And that's gonna toast the pumpkin seeds, give them flavor. And then when they're done, we're gonna have everything ready. We're gonna put them into a pan. We're gonna add some soda so they kind of get big, and a little bit of vanilla and some cinnamon. It's really simple, but you just wanna have the steps ready to go at the time. So Grandma's gonna mix the frosting, make it really smooth to fill it with, and we'll be ready to go. So the brittle got up to 310 degrees, which is hot, so I have everything ready. I have a buttered pan that I'm gonna pour it into. We're gonna put in some baking soda, which the difference usually with my brittle is I like baking soda because it makes it lofty. It doesn't make it, I don't like hard, really thin brittles that kind of want to break your teeth. I like them to have air in them. And so then I put some cinnamon in too, which kind of makes it more fall inspired. But as you stir it, you're gonna see that soda, as you stir it in, it kind of gets airy. It gets a little bit more, just look at that, almost like, not sponge-like, but kind of like that honeycomb, kind of candy-like. And then I do not ever spread it out. I let it just kind of fall and move on its own. That way, it also doesn't get really hard and break your teeth. It just stays like this nice, really easy to break brittle, which to me just is what makes it a lot easier to eat. It's tender. So we have all that. And we're gonna put it in there and we're gonna let that cool completely and then just break it into small pieces. Grandma has the filling ready. And so now we can just open up our cooled cake.
Okay.
Which you always hope, oh, maybe from the other end it might be easier, I guess, because then
yes, that's right.
That will be the way it opened. There we go. And you can see as you're doing it, it keeps that shape. And that's why we rolled it up when it was warm, because it kind of keeps that same curve. Mm-hmm. So we can see our filling is perfectly smooth. And Grandma she uses either one, but a spoon or a little spatula, kind of depends, and I'll kind of dollop it on in different places for you if you want to start smoothing it out.
Okay.
And this is why I'm assuming you don't want a warm cake, because
it would melt it right in.
It would just melt the frosting, which the whole point of this is to see the rolls once it's done. You want to see the frosting in the middle, on the sides, like on the edges. And otherwise, if it was warm, it would melt, it would ooze out. It wouldn't be pretty. To me, it just wouldn't be very good. So I'm gonna take all that off. Mm-hmm. I just think it's kind of one of those things that it's not that it's difficult, it just takes steps and it takes cooling time and all that, but the actual thing.
It's very good.
And what I like about it, and you were talking about this too, you can make it ahead of time. Because you were always, to me, the queen of, you would make as much as you could early on in the week.
That's right.
So the day of Thanksgiving or whatever meal, you weren't having to do everything. So you can put this whole thing in the freezer, you were saying?
That's right.
And then you just get it out
whenever you want to serve it.
like an hour before, probably,
That's right.
or something.
That's right. That's right.
Which is nice, because Grandma always, if it wasn't cookies, it was cake or coffee cake or bars, whatever it was, always has, and still, something in her freezer in case company comes.
That's right.
You never know who could stop by. And then she has something for them that's ready to get out and just be nice and not, kind of extra special. It's never a bought item. It's never a boxed item. It's always something that she made. Oftentimes there's cinnamon rolls in your freezer too.
Yes, there are.
Are there right now?
Yeah, wait, you have something there. And cookies. I've got cookies in the freezer.
I still go up for lunch every Monday or sometime during the week, and we always have some type of cookie or something for dessert. Or growing up, we would always have break.
Right. Yes,
Every 10 a.m. usually.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready to roll
Yes.
it?
Grandma's gonna start rolling it, and she's just gonna make it kind of like a tight, nice roll, but you can see it's coming away from the towel pretty easily, and that's because of the powdered sugar and that we used a thin towel. And like I said, if you get a crack, which, okay, we don't have a crack, so we can't tell you, but if you do, powdered sugar covers up, I think, a multitude of sins. You can really heavily powder sugar it or something if you would have to.
Right.
Now, a lot of times, and I'm guessing you do too, I think plastic wrap is probably the best way, because now we want to chill it.
Right.
And that's mostly just to make sure it kind of sets up, because it's a little soft right now.
Can we roll it on there?
Yeah, I think so.
There we go.
Oh, yeah. That worked out really pretty.
Okay.
That's
you
perfect.
Can roll it up.
So we're gonna just tightly wrap it. We're gonna put it in the fridge, let it cool down, and then we'll kind of decorate it, chop it up, let everyone see it, and try it. Here is the completed pumpkin roll. And you see what I mean? You can just cover it at the end, like it snowed, which, do either of you remember snow at Thanksgiving? Did you ever have snow at Thanksgiving?
Oh, I'm sure.
This is Grandpa, Grandma's husband. They've been married 72?
No, 63.
63. Oops, that was going way ahead. They've been married 63 years.
It will be Monday.
On Monday, yes. Their anniversary is coming right up, and they have had a wonderful life together and been very healthy, and we have been fortunate to be close together. Like I said, growing up, we were maybe a quarter of a mile, maybe an eighth of a mile apart, and then now we are 5 miles. So big distance now.
Yeah.
So we have Grandpa here to make sure he taste tests because he is Grandma's taste tester all the time. And the very end one can sometimes, if you want to, you can take a really little sliver off just to make sure you get into it better. But you can see as you slice it, you get these beautiful slices where you see that nice kind of roll with the center of it. And so you can kind of just slice it and then you get these really pretty pieces. And then I made that brittle, and that was mostly just to kind of have just a little something extra that you can, I just chopped some up. I took the big piece when it cooled and chopped up into pieces. So you could just serve this on the side, or you could take some crushed up pieces and kind of just put it on the center just for something extra. And it's very tender, so no one's gonna break a tooth, but you can use the fines on it too, and just kind of drizzle those down the front. So Grandpa has a piece to try. If you want to, you don't have to, but it's good.
I want to.
There's some for Grandma, some for me. I thought we could all try it.
Okay.
What I like about it is it's very tender, it's very moist.
Very good.
It is very good. Grandma knows how to make pumpkin roll. You know, you get that nice cream
Right,
cheese
it is.
filling, and it really offsets the cake and kind of just complements each other really well. And the thing is, it's not that pumpkin roll is a really secret recipe. It's out there a lot, but the time and care that get put into it, and just the having that something special that you may not have all the time, I think that's the great part. So is Grandma, does she know what she's doing, Grandpa?
Yeah, it's very good. Very good. In fact, it calls for another mouthful.
All it needs is a little bit of coffee, I think, with it. I get my coffee habit from Grandpa. He takes his with cream, I take mine black, but coffee with dessert is always good. So this is celebrating Thanksgiving, and as always, I am mostly thankful for my family. That's why I always talk about growing up on the farm, where I live, being rooted where I live, where my great-grandparents lived, my grandparents, my parents. We're all together, and I'm just so thankful that I still have my grandparents to be able to celebrate that with. As always, you can check my website, wiseguy.com, for this recipe and all my other recipes, and of course, share this video around because, yes, it helps me, but it helps everyone see that this is so easy, doable. You can do it with my grandma, and then you'll know how to do it forever. So until next time, thank you for helping me, Grandma.
You're welcome.
And thank you for being here, Grandpa.
Thank you.
Have a good Thanksgiving.